And I know many of you are going to say that this isn't a real flyer, the Bloodstalker, but I'm going to start with this thing in at the number 10 spot, as I think it is deserving of this list, as you know, it is a kind of airborne creature, and yes, there are some gliders on this list, so you could say flyers and gliders, and I'm bending the rules slightly, but either way, talking about the Bloodstalker, this is pretty much your best bet on the Gen 1 expansion map, and if you're just playing on Gen 1, then this is like the only creature which you can use to really get around. There are no other options accessible to you, as flyers aren't allowed on that map, and this thing can absolutely zip across the map and is a really great water creature as well, which is actually what I use it for the most, ironically, considering I'm talking about flyers in this video. I don't really use it as much for its, you know, kind of Spider-Man-esque abilities. I mainly use it in the water, but still, it is an insanely great flyer. You could say, yes, it's a glider. I'm just going to call it a flyer for the purpose of this video. And yeah, it really can get around insanely quickly. There is a bit of a learning curve with control, and I'm still not great at controlling these things. But you know, at least I've done the Alpha Bog Race mission on Gen 1, so I have that as a little claim to fame. And also, learning these things are great for Gen 1. Again, those missions are going to get you hexagons, so if you learn how to fly one of these things, then those bog spider race missions are going to be really easy, and they're just a really useful creature to learn as well. So I think if you haven't already, and you have access to it, give the Bloodstalker a little go, and you may find that you enjoy it quite a lot. Next up, we have the Wyvern, and this creature is definitely one which has to be on this list, and does actually count as a real flyer and not a glider, but I'll start talking about that now. Either way, the Lightning Wyvern is my preferred Wyvern, so that is why there is B-roll of that particular Wyvern in this video, and they are actually one of the faster flyers in the game, although it may not seem like it. They are, and they really do rack up when it comes to flying, and you know, they deal a lot of damage on top of that as well. Their only real downside being their frankly annoying taming method, and also their rubbish turning circle, but that isn't really what you're going to be using these things for. You're not going to be doing handbrake skids down a highway with a Wyvern for that instance, even though there aren't even really roads in Ark. That's a pretty niche thing. Either way, if you're on the ground and you press C, they're actually pretty good wood gatherers, which most people don't take into account for. But they can also, on top of being great wood gatherers, be great creatures for picking up other creatures as well, which a lot of people do use them for. And it is kind of buggy how they pick up creatures, but you know, it is Ark, I guess. That's just kind of what's expected, really. And the reason why the Lightning Wyvern is the best is just its special lightning and breathing ability, in my opinion, just has an advantage over the fire, poison and ice abilities. Namely because it deals some torpor damage, I think, and it has decent range and control. Next up, we've got the Pteranodon, and this creature does have to be on this list, and although it isn't going to be the greatest flyer out there, considering its level and accessibility, it does have to be on this list, for obvious reasons. Its accessibility is one of the best out of any flyer, really. The Crystal Wyvern is the only one which I can mention, which is a little bit more accessible, as a note run is really easy and no saddle is required whatsoever for that, and it is an easier tame in this thing. Although the taming for the Pteranodon is ridiculously easy. Club it or a couple of trank darts once bowled, and there you go. A higher, or even highest level 150 Pteranodon can be yours as quickly as that. And they're great for PvE players and also for PvP players as well, especially for raids early on in the game, as these things spin attack can be extremely useful for destroying things inside bases such as smithies, and also players and creatures if you're encountering anything like that. But they're also just great creatures for general travel around the Ark map as well, so you know, they definitely have a huge advantage when it comes to that. And actually, their damage really isn't that bad in any stretch of the imagination. Although, yes, it's not going to be the greatest out there. You're not going to be getting giga kinds of performance out of this thing. They still really do pack a punch, in my opinion, when it comes to terms with damage. So, yeah, they definitely do have a lot of respect with me for that quota, considering how easy they are to tame. And also their speed on top of that as well. It's just a nice little addition to have. Their only real downsides being their absolutely terrible weight and stamina, but really what can you expect for a tame this early on into your Ark progress? Next up, we've got the Rock Drake, and yes, another glider, but still, it definitely does need to be on this list, as you know, airborne creature and all of that. And yes, it can't be that high on the list because it is a glider. I will warrant that. I will deduct points for it being a glider, as they aren't actually as useful for flyers in most cases, unless you're going from a place of high elevation to low elevation. Then they are extremely useful, and especially on maps like Arboration, they are very, very useful. But on maps like Crystal Isles, the island, even Ragnarok, and a lot of Scorched Earth, especially Scorched Earth, considering it is quite a flat map. Yes, I know there are mountain ranges towards the north, I think, but it still is a pretty barren map in terms of a lot of elevation and a lot of things to grab onto. It is a really large desert after all. But, you know, for all of those cases where this thing is useful, it definitely does rack up. And its stamina drain is actually pretty minimal, which is great for any kind of travelling mount. And obviously its damage really is going to rack up as well on top of that. And that means you can protect yourself on your travels as well. But they do also have the speed to get out of any sticky situation which you may find yourself in. And even on some flat grounds, they actually aren't the worst and still usable, although I'm not sure about what other maps these things do actually spawn on apart from Arboration. I know they were on Crystal Isles in the mod version of it before it became an official Arc map, but I'm not really sure what other maps they spawn on, and they may only spawn on Arboration, but correct me on that if I'm wrong, as always, in the comments down below. In at number 6 is the Maywing, and I promise that this is the last glider on the list, and there are no more gliders after this point, so if you're getting annoyed by the gliders on this list, no more past this point. They can't be in the top 5, they are gliders and not flyers after all. In terms of the Maywing though, this thing has just insane speed. Its speed is one of the best in the game, if not the best, for any kind of travelling mount, and it also seems a lot easier to control than the Rock Drake. And again, like the Bloodstalker, I have done the Alpha Maywing Glider race mission, or whatever it's called. The one on Gen 2, the Maywing race mission, just that one. Yeah, that's my claim to fame for this thing. And also, I just really enjoy using this thing across any map, really. And this biome of the Crystal Isles is a good example of where the Maywing is extremely useful, because there is a lot of varying elevation. But they're not just insane gliders, which their saddle was unlocked at level 19, which is absolutely insane for their wealth of abilities. These things are also portable feeding troughs, which makes breeding and raising creatures so much easier, and they can also gather berries on top of that too, which is just a very nice bonus, which, you know, every creature, if they have it, it is definitely very, very welcome considering their wide use. In at number 5 is the Crystal Wyvern. And this creature, why is it so much higher than the Wyvern on the list? And I definitely do have a preference, and more for the Blood Crystal Wyvern than the Water Crystal Wyvern, or whatever this one's called. I can't actually remember. But, you know, for the purpose of the Crystal Wyvern, this one generally just looks more like what you would think of a Crystal Wyvern. It just kind of has that more Crystal Wyvern-y feel. But definitely go for the Blood Crystal Wyvern if you can. But their taming method is just so simple, they have to be in this spot. Their only real downside being the level 65 cap on, not cap, but like requirement, I should say, to be able to actually passive feed these things, which is Crystal. And it is such an easy taming method. There's a spot where you can sit on their back and then just feed these things Crystal, and you don't even have to really press anything. You just press E when it tells you to, or the equivalent button if you're those console players out there. And actually quite a lot of my viewers do play on things like Switch and Xbox. Don't really know how many PlayStation players there are out there. If you're a PlayStation player that's watching this video, comment down below. There'll be a pinned comment which I would have put there, and just chuck down the PlayStation gang, you know. Bring all of that community together, and, you know, any other gang as well. Xbox gang, Switch gang, mobile gang, if that's any of you, and also the PC gang as well. I'm sure there's still a lot of you out there. In at number 4, we have the Rhino Gnatha. And the fact is, this is probably one of the best creatures for transporting tames if you don't have access to a cryopod, which wouldn't really make sense considering the level requirement on the saddle and its very, very difficult taming method. If you didn't know already, this creature spawns on the island and the Lost Island in those locations, which are on screen right now. And actually, on the old version of Ark, they're really hard to find. Their spawns are just absolutely awful, whereas on ASA, these things are absolutely everywhere, and they are terrifying. As always, raise up your dino count if you want to get these things to spawn on the old version of Ark, and you can also use the Dino Ark command, which is destroy wild dinos. And there's one which is very similar to that, which is like destroy dinos, which will destroy your tame dinos. You don't want to do that at all. That is definitely not what you want out of this creature. But the thing is, in terms of its transporting abilities, it can pick up Rexes, and it is widely used in PvP use for just absolute decimating bases, as its damage and wealth of abilities is insane, frankly. But if you want to know a quick, brief synopsis on how you tame one, you get a pheromone gland from a male Rhinogonatha, tame a Bronto and get the resources, which are on screen now, only necessary for 100% effectiveness, of course. Then you want to get your Bronto when you find a female Rhinogonatha, get it to aggro on you, then trap it in some way. The net gun is the best, but you can obviously get those gateways and dino gates in. That'll be a bit harder though. Then just get its health to as low as you can and use the magnifying glass, or if you have access to the awesome spyglass mod, or use it, then yeah, use that, because it will very much help you in visualizing it, as you can damage it and see its health at the same time instead of having to switch between. But the magnifying glass is definitely going to work, and I think the tech binoculars will work as well, which you may have considering the saddle level requirements. Then you want to feed that pheromone to your Bronto, and then after it comes out of the trap, it is going to impregnate your dino. Also, feel free to damage it more if needed. Then after that, it will have those hunger timers, which are necessary for 100% effectiveness. Then it is just going to fall over, and sadly your creature is going to die, so don't make it a creature which is too special to you. Then a baby Rhinogonatha will come out, press E, and there you go. In at number 3 is the Snow Owl. And, you know, this creature has a wide range of abilities, which really do need to be respected in terms of any Ark creature out there. And this really does demonstrate a lot of abilities. If you're not a Snow Owl guy, just pretend everything I'm talking about here is to do with the Griffin, because the Griffin is not on this list, but it is still very similar to this tame in terms of obviously that diving ability, although it can do damage from it, and I don't think the Snow Owl can. But you know, the Griffin is just going to be one of those honourable mentions. I'm not going to include it in this video, as I'm not really a Griffin user. Everything that the Griffin can do for me, the Snow Owl can do for me, so I'll always use that. And on top of that, it also does have a sort of heat-seeking ability, which allows you to see any kind of organism which gives off heat, which I think is every Ark organism. Great for PvP scenarios if you're trying to track down a player, or in PvE if you're just trying to track down a dino, which you've lost in some cases, which happens actually quite a lot and you wouldn't really expect it. And also you want to level up that stamina, not just so they can fly longer distances, but so they can heal creatures, as if you level up stamina, they can heal for longer, and that is their main ability and claim to fame, as they can heal any wild creature, enemy creature if you're feeling nice, and tame creatures as well. The wild creatures being very useful, as if you're trying to tame a creature, then you can heal it up if it's low on health, or if you've just got its health low by absolutely pumping tranks into that thing, and it will make that tame go significantly smoother for you, and you're not going to regret taming this thing. Also, if you have gachas on top of it as well, then you have yourself the benefit of feeding those gachas owl pellets and getting insane loot out of them, which is just really nice to have. And yes, it's not going to compare to the speed of the Managama, but the Managama isn't on this list as well. I'll just chuck it out as another honourable mention. But if you do have access to the Snow Owl, then I really think you should tame this thing. Very easy knockout tame, and 100% worth it because of its absolute wealth of abilities. In at number 2, we have the Argentavis, and this did have to be in this spot. It is an absolute insane creature for so many things, namely the fact that it is like the best carrier of metal out there, and no creature can really compete with this thing on that front, as it has insane weight reduction on things like metal, crystal and obsidian. And when paired with the Anki and the Dodic, you have yourself an absolute farming machine, as this thing can pick up both of them, obviously not at the same time, but it can actually pick up some smaller creatures like the Dodo in its beak, just as a nice little ability. You can carry a player and a Dodo if you know you're that kind of guy. And obviously those Ankis and Dodics are going to harvest all those necessary resources, and then the Anki can carry it, or the Dodic can carry it for you, but you'll probably want to put it in the LG's inventory, as it has that weight reduction, so the weight is going to be less. Not sure about weight reduction on the Dodic and the Anki though. Also, their saddle does act as a portable smithy, which is nice, and if you eat a dead corpse of any kind, they will also get a regen effect, which is insane for healing up their health. But before we get into the number 1 spot, I just want to list a quick couple of honourable mentions. I have to mention the Quetzal. That thing is an absolute beast of a flyer, and if you ever find yourself taming one, you're probably going to be very happy with it, although it does have quite a slow speed. Then also the Griffin has to be here for obvious reasons. Put the Managama here as well, because, you know, it's widely used. And with that, we'll get into the number 1 spot. And in at number 1, we have the Desmodus. And this thing has to be in this spot, in my opinion. It is just such a useful creature. It needs to be here. It has to be. But instead of me just ranting on about this having to be in the number 1 slot, what does it do? Well, firstly, it does have the glide ability like the Snarl, which I love to have in a flyer, and it's something which I think if the RG had, be really cool, actually, and I would enjoy that. But mainly their Sanguine Elixir is what makes these things great, as it is an absolute cheat for taming. 30% of that tame is already been done for you with a click of a button. They can also farm blood bags as well, making them really great for taming other ones, as you don't need to spend ages farming loads and loads of blood bags. And Bloodstalker tames are a lot easier as well. They can also grip onto walls and vertical ceilings, not vertical ceilings, vertical walls and ceilings, I should have said, like a Tapijara, and then go invisible. That didn't really work for me because for some reason my arc was just glitching out, and it also maybe I'm in the wastelands and that doesn't have a night cycle, so it only does work at night. I should mention that. But yeah, these things, absolutely insane tames with abilities no other creature even has. The top 10 classic arc tames. In at number 10, we have got the Raptor, and it is fair to say that a ton of these were tamed and used in those early days of Arc, and personally myself, I did use quite a lot of them as well. On top of this, I did go through a fair few of them, and many people did as well. And when new players do kind of maybe think back on what Arc was like previously, they're probably going to think of things like Raptors and Rexes and Spinos and Carnos and Allos and things like that. By the way, the Allo is not appearing on this list, as far as I'm concerned, it is a later creature, although I should probably check that, but I will inform you further on in the video, because actually I'm not too sure on the chronology, and actually just checking, the Allosaurus was not around in 2015. The Alpha Carno, the Alpha Raptor, the Alpha Rex, the Angler, the Anki, the Aranio, and the RG were the only creatures beginning with A out in 2015. The fun facts we all know. Either way, this creature was extremely useful back in the day and got tons of use. Obviously, people didn't really care too much about its low weight and its somewhat slower speed than what some people would expect from these days of Arc. People didn't really seem to care as much about things like that. They were just so excited to get their hands on creatures. At least that was kind of my experience of it back then, and yeah, it really did do the job for me, and I got a lot of great use out of this creature, and it really is one of those great ones. And if you do have the time, still to this day, I would definitely recommend you get a Raptor, as they can be quite useful in the early game stages, as you have yourself a nice neat carnivore to use around the map. Next up, we have got the Beelzebufo, and this creature is here just because when it released, which I'm actually surprised to say is 2015. I had a look and I did some research on it because I thought this was more of a 2016 creature, but no, it was out in 2015. Kind of does make sense when I actually think back with all the chronology, and this creature really was heavily useful. Didn't use it for any kind of cement-based gathering. Not even sure if it could do that back in the days. Comment that down below, because I'm not too sure of its abilities and if it had a TLC at any point, but it was definitely widely used just for a really good travel mount. I used it a lot for underwater exploration back then, and you kind of put the Megalodon here as well on this list. It isn't appearing on the list, but I'm going to give it a brief mention, as the Megalodon was definitely a really nice classic arc tame, which I used quite heavily, but I did use this thing a lot, and in some ways it's more memorable because its release was quite striking. Like, I remember when this thing came out, I just really wanted to tame one, and I really enjoyed using it. I liked it's kind of like sort of playing a Mario game. That's how I looked at it. You're playing a Mario game, but it's Arc, because these things could jump around, jump like crazy, and do all those things. And the Procoptodon might have been out at this point, and you had that, but I just felt so much more free with this creature. Coming up next, we have got the Carnotaurus, and this creature is definitely a favourite of mine and has to be in the classic Arc tames list. It was here from the beginning. Did, I think, have some sort of a model change at some point, and even back then actually I think the models looked really cool, and compared to like the RG and the old Rex model, it looks significantly less outdated, at least in my mind. Either way, pretty confident they have had a model update since then. Obviously, texture updates and things like that have happened throughout Ark's game just being developed as it progressed from being a 2015 looking game to maybe more of a 2018, 2019 looking game in its kind of late stages, I would say, because it doesn't look like most of the games that you would get in 2015, especially for that kind of survival game. And also, if you didn't know already, this is the 2023 version of Ark, which is ASA for this B-roll here. You'll see it interchanging between the two types of game. So the Beelzebufo would have been the original Ark, and the Raptor and the Carno were in ASA. If you couldn't tell already, you could probably tell because the graphics have significantly changed, haven't they? For the better, you could say, although the ghosting and the shadows like not really working properly are maybe not the best of things, but still, you know, it is overall a better looking game, and you know, it kind of makes you think back of those classic times. We are doing a classic tames list after all. Also, if you were wondering, the Carno has had a TLC since release, so now it's even better than before, and it is ridiculously easy to tame on ASA. If you are actually playing ASA, there's pretty dead at the moment with the general player space, so you know, that's what that's like. But either way, Carno, still remember it so clear to this day. Used it so much just as a general carnivore, even before I got that saddle, because obviously doing the levels was actually quite difficult back in the days. To spend quite a lot of time, really is a classic. Next up, we have got the Quetzal, and this creature is here because actually, surprisingly, when it released in 2015, thought it was more of a 2016 creature, but again, there's another creature on this list which is later on, which I also thought was a 2016 creature, but no, it is still a 2015 creature. It just came out later in the year, of course, and when looking at creatures like this, it really did change the Ark space. Like, the amount of use that you got out of this creature, especially with that platform saddle, was insane. It was just so cool to fly these things around, and it was, again, a new perspective on the game. You could build the base on the back of a flyer, and because flyer speed leveling hadn't been nerfed at that time, you could get these things traveling at insane speeds, and it was so fun to go around the map with your mates and just absolutely dominate metal farming, because that's what I used this for. Wasn't really a PvP player. If you were thinking that I was going to say dominate the map, didn't really use them for that, but metal farming was so easy with these things, and just general transportation of goods was so easy, and it was nice to have a nice base and sometimes a taming trap on the back of one of these things. The Dodo is here next, and could I really make a top 10 classic Ark Tames video without actually including the Dodo on the list? Come on, it is the Dodo after all. Probably one of the first creatures, if not the first creature you're going to see in Ark, and everyone when they started in 2015 tamed yourself a Dodo at some point. They were so easy. Still took 15 minutes to tame because, yes, taming took absolutely ages. At least mine felt like 15 minutes to tame. Probably might have been 5, could have been 10. Either way, you punch these things out and you feed them some berries. I might have not even been feeding these things medjos. Maybe that's why it just took so long. And yes, you have yourself the cute Dodo friend, and the Dodos are definitely a classic Ark Tame, and it could not be a classic Ark Tames list without including these things here. They really do add something to Ark, even though maybe not the most widely used creature, they have to be on this list. In at number 5, we have got the Pteranodon, and this creature is here just because it was so useful to get up into the air that early on in the game, and it really felt like something so special to get up and fly in the air. It was like the biggest achievement in the Ark game. I probably should have put this thing a little bit higher than the number 5 spots, not in the number 1 spot. We're not that close to the end of the list yet. We're halfway in, guys. Either way, these creatures, they just made such a mark on your Ark progress, and you could just speed up everything so much with a Pteranodon. You're like, oh yeah, this is all fine now because I have a Pteranodon, and it was such a pain once you lost it somewhere because you died and you just spent ages going back to get it. Why, you always have a spare Pteranodon at home, and then you can have the other one to follow you once you're heading back, obviously with a spare saddle on it. Otherwise, they are pretty much useless as creatures. Like, you need the saddle to really use this creature effectively. It's not like the Carno or, you know, in some cases like Rexes and Gigas and things like that, where you can have them following you around. No, you really do need the saddle to get the use out of this creature. And actually getting that chitin or keratin, whatever you preferred. I got loads of keratin for the saddle back in the day, but now thinking about it, I should have just got loads of chitin, as killing all of those insects is so much easier than going around and killing loads of carb enemies. Another pretty classic creature in my eyes, although not on the list, but you know, again, I'll give it a brief mention here. And the Pteranodon was so easy, so simple to tame, and just made your progress and just your general Ark life so much better that it has to be included on this list, and people still use it tons to this day, and it really is uncompetable in the level range that you are when you're taming one of these things. Next up on the list, we have got the Tiny Tim, and obviously the Tiny Tim has to be on the list. Again, surprised that Tiny Tim came out in 2015. I thought it was 2016 as well. But it kind of just makes sense that the birth of Tiny Tim did happen in 2015. Originally called the Giganotosaurus, soon after named the Tiny Tim, of course, by Ibalistic Squid and Ashdub, if you didn't know the reference already. And the Tiny Tim was capable of dealing just so much damage. You felt on top of the world, and you could decimate any single creature, especially things like Spinos and Rexes. They felt like small little puny critters to the Tiny Tim. You felt like an absolute demolition king, being able to just destroy everything in your path, that being trees, that being creatures, even sometimes the oceans, which you might not expect out of these creatures, considering you might not think they're the best swimmers. They're not really, but they can go through rivers like it's nothing, because most of the time their feet are touching the bottom, and like you can see there, it just crosses that like it's nothing. It essentially just walks along all of it, and they're just so OP, so big, and they really did make such a nice effort to contributing to the evolution of Ark, and they just so successful as a creature. I really did have to put them in on the list. In at number 3, we have got the Rex, and this creature is here just because Ark probably wouldn't be Ark without the Rex. And when thinking of dinosaurs in general, you often do think of creatures like this. Obviously, the Rex is probably like one of the most popular dinosaurs, well-known dinosaurs to date in the world. Like, everyone just knows what this creature is, and everyone will use this creature really in their Ark progress. It is such a great boss creature, and when the Broodmother was a thing, I'm pretty sure it was out at roughly release, but it might have not been. I think it came a little bit afterwards. Definitely still a 2015 thing. You'd gather up those Rexes, and then you'd go and fight the Broodmother. You could use a wealth of other creatures as well. I did use things like Carnos and Spinos as well. Really were the goats of the boss defeating world back then. You wouldn't really have any Daedons or UTs, but still, you would really just pack a punch against those bosses. And also, actually just for general use around the map, I did use the Rex quite a lot in those early days. I don't really do it anymore, as there are some better options out there. But back then, the Rex was just one of those goats that you'd use everywhere for just getting any kind of damage done. You just bring the Rexes along with you, even if you, again, you didn't have the saddles for them, if you weren't obviously a high enough level, or if you just didn't have the resources to craft the saddle. Probably more or less the first one, because the Rexes, in all fairness, weren't actually too difficult to tame. Yes, the time commitment to taming one was quite large, but once you had the tranks, and if you like trapped them in a cliff or something like that, or you just like stood on top of a cliff really and then just shot it from down below, it was a pretty easy secured tame with no issues whatsoever, as long as there wasn't too many hostile things in the area. In at number 2, we have got the RG, and not only is this thing nostalgic for its old model, but just also its tremendous use back in the day, and the upgrade of getting an RG over the Pteranodon was insane, especially considering you could level up that speed and get it even faster than something like a Pteranodon with not too much effort. And then from that, you'd have much better weight and much better stamina, of course, and you could just take these things around the map with absolute ease, and you could get loads of stuff on them with no risk of being encumbered. They could also pick up a wider range of creatures too, and if you paired it with an Anki or a Dodic, then you'd really net yourself with some great harvesting power, and you could just put loads of these resources onto the RG, and it was such a great time. Not sure if they did have weight reduction back in the day, or a smithy as a saddle, or even that regen buff. They might have received quite a huge amount of TLC when obviously they got the model update and all of that. But actually, I do want you to comment that down below, because strangely, for a creature that I use so much, and that I used so much in those very early days of Ark, I don't really know what ability it strictly had back then, and I do want to know for sure. It did not carry creatures in its mouth as an extra thing. But obviously it can do that now if you want to carry your pet dodo around on your adventures and really let it see all the sights that the world has to offer in Ark. And in ASA you can do it again, but with some better graphics and some lower FPS. As always, Ark performance descended. And finally, in number 1, we have got the Spino, and this creature for me really just did invoke a lot of incitement in me, and as a general creature I felt it to be bigger and more powerful than the Rex, and with its added mobility as well, I thought it was just fabulous. And with that water mobility as well, really truly great creature. Back in the days it did not have the hydration buff, at least I'm pretty sure it didn't, and it didn't have the ability to go up on its hind legs, and I'm not sure if it had oxygen then and doesn't have oxygen now, or didn't have oxygen then and now has oxygen. It's one of those combinations. It has received quite a little bit of change since its release, obviously with an updated model as well. At least I'm pretty confident that there was an updated Spino model. Most of the models did actually really get updated in Ark as they went through the change of updating all the UI, but just this was like the go-to creature for me. I wanted a Spino, and when I tamed one, I was definitely not disappointed, and I vastly prefer these things to the Rexes in like every way. And I would use these things for doing bosses, I would use these things for everything I would use a Rex for, and it kind of made the Rex reasonably redundant for me, as I didn't really think too much about, oh, how much like health does it really have relating to how much damage and how balanced of a creature it is to make it really good at dealing with all of those bosses. I didn't think of things like that. I was just like, whatever does more damage, and the Spino tended to do more damage, at least from the ones that I tamed back in the day, and I vastly preferred its underwater travel and just general mobility. I felt it to be a much more widely useful creature, and that is why I simply had to put it on this list. It just is such a successful creature for me, and in my opinion it is the most classic Ark tame out there. Obviously for you it may be different, but for me this is just the absolute GOAT of classic Ark tames, and it has no competition for me whatsoever, just none at all.
So thank you to my wonderful patrons Katerina Puchkova, Karina Thorne, Dominic Masijewski and Ethan Tapia, who have all supported me through Patreon or through YouTube memberships. If you want to join this list, then go join Patreon or YouTube members, but thanks to all of these guys.